Good morning. Welcome. I'm Lindsay Stevenson, and I'm here with Rachel Druckenmeier. And we are here talking about human intelligence, and I'm really excited about what we're going to share with you today because it's going to be all about gratitude. And Rachel actually spoke this morning about gratitude. And so there's a few things specifically that I want to ask you about. But before I do that, I just want to sort of get an overview from you because you're in the wellness industry, and so really talking about how gratitude impacts wellness. Yeah. So what did you talk about this morning?
Yeah, so we talked about a bunch of different things. I mean, the thing that I kind of started the message with is that this is something that's not just going to affect you in your work life, but that gratitude and having this approach of using appreciation as the core of relationships can help your marriage, it can help you with your kids, it can help you with your neighbors. Like, truly, this is something that crosses everything in your life, not just your job. So we really kind of started off looking at this idea of what gratitude is really saying is, like, I see you, I get you, and you matter. And so often I think people go through their days just not feeling valued. They feel like no one really notices them. You know, they feel like someone can complain very easily, but to really focus on what it is that I appreciate and value and focus on that it takes a shift, and we're not necessarily used to doing that, but I feel like we kind of accomplished that today.
And we want it, right? So that's part of it is like we don't do a very good job of giving it, but it's something that's a really high priority for us to receive. So I think during your session you talked a little bit about the numbers in terms of why people leave the job and managers thinking that it's for one reason instead of another. So talk a little bit about that, like in the workplace, what impact does not having gratitude as part of your mentality, what does that do?
Yes, that's a great question, because I think what happens is a lot of times leadership might think, this is fluffy, like we can spend our money on other things, but this is not really what we focus on. So there was a study done where they took a bunch of exit interviews from thousands of employees, from housekeeping to CEOs. And what they found was that 89% of managers believe their employees leave for money.
Wow.
And then when you ask the employees, again, housekeeping to CEOs, like every spectrum, across the organization, 88% said they leave for reasons other than money.
I feel like there's a disparity there.
Yeah, total disconnect.
So when we're talking about as business owners, as sort of the leaders in our organizations, when we say appreciation is fluffy, we don't really want to deal with that. You're saying, statistically speaking, we are losing people because we're not having that conversation, even though we think they're leaving for money.
We do. I mean, I think it was Stephen Covey that said, next to physical survival, the greatest need of a human being is psychological survival, which is the need to be affirmed, understood, and valued, and appreciated. And we know that the main reason people leave their company is typically often because of their manager. And people don't typically leave managers that are really appreciative and grateful and kind and, say thank you in an authentic and meaningful way. So this is really, for organizations, the talent market it's hot right now, right? Like, people can hop from firm to firm very, very easily, and they're less apt to leave an organization where they feel like they're part of something that matters, and they feel like their role as a human being is noticed.
Wow. It's like super deep, right? Their role as a human being is noticed. I think that's so cool. So I know that you had some part of your session where you were actually saying, okay, I shared with you why appreciation is important. I shared with you that people are actually leaving because they're not appreciated. Yeah. And then there was something that you call the FBI experience, which is sort of the way to deal with it, right? Like to move forward. So explain that. What is the FBI experience?
So I learned the FBI actually from a group called the Barry Wehmiller Leadership Institute, and it stands for Feeling, Behavior, and Impact. So whenever you're trying to be more authentic and intentional with your appreciation, because a lot of times appreciation looks like, hey, great job. Good job, team, everyone. Global affirmations are not particularly meaningful. And so what we found is that meaningful appreciation is individualized, specific, and deserved. And so one way to do that is the FBI. So feeling, behavior, impact. So for instance, I would say, I would think my friend Jackie, for instance, Jackie, I'm grateful that last night when I got in really late from the snow and the slush in New York City, that you were willing to change the dinner reservation so that I didn't have to go anywhere. And that made me feel relieved, because the last thing I wanted to do was go back out in that snow. So for me, instead of Jackie, thanks for changing dinner, I talked about how I felt, I talked about what her behavior was, and then I talked about the impact that it had on me. And that can be a really powerful, simple thing to do, but really powerful to make communication and appreciation more intentional.
So being able to use the FBI methodology sort of is great, because as CPAs and CGMAs, a lot of us love lists, right? And things that we can just follow the framework. Yeah. So to take it maybe a little step further, what does that look like public? Do you do it publicly, or is it just a one-on-one? I mean, what's the best approach? Is it, I just tell you specifically and then you feel great and we move on, or should I do it in front of the whole company, or are you going to like cry because I did it in front of the company? I mean, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, so that's another great question. So if you've heard of the 5 love languages, there's a guy named Gary Chapman who wrote a book years ago called The 5 Love Languages that a lot of people use in their relationships. And so they wrote a version of that book called The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And so what that focuses on is they really focus on 4 instead of 5, but words of appreciation, or words of affirmation, quality time, tangible gifts, and acts of service. And so they found that the most prevalent type that people like to receive the most is words of affirmation. About 50% of people like words of affirmation. And for some people that you might want it privately, like it might really mean a lot if I'm an influential person to you, if I say that privately. But you might say, I really want 1,000 people to know that I did this thing, and I want public praise, and I want to hear you say it, or a handwritten note. So for that person, words of affirmation is meaningful. Somebody else might really enjoy time with their family, and they might say, I don't really care about affirmation and public appreciation, but if you can give me an extra vacation day so that I can be with my kids, that makes me feel appreciated. So there's a way you can kind of go through this process. There's something called the MBA, Motivating by Appreciation Inventory, and you can actually have your team take it, and it's a free code, you can get the book too. But to be able to find out, like, what are people's appreciation languages?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So basically, we do it totally wrong when we try and blanket approach appreciation, even if we're trying to do it. So we can't just do it the same for every single person that works with us. And there is a way for us to actually learn how to do this better so that we can give appreciation individually to everybody because they do it differently. They like to receive it differently.
Yeah, in a way that matters.
Cool.
So, and for clients too, I mean, this is something that matters. We did an activity called How Full Is Your Bucket? There's a book put out by Gallup focused on that concept, this idea of being a bucket filler. So how, when I leave an interaction, how do I make sure that the person I'm interacting with feels filled up because I was kind, I smiled, I respected them, I gave them a compliment, versus a bucket dipper who takes. So we've all had experiences with bucket dippers. You leave the interaction and you're like, I feel not awesome right now. And so the focus is, how can we shift to intentionally be people who fill other people's buckets in the ways that are meaningful to them? So, what are their hobbies? So my husband's a Red Sox fan, for instance, and my CEO knows that. So when he has access to tickets to a Red Sox game, he reaches out to me first to say, hey, Rachel, do you and Bill want to go to the game? And then I get like major wife points because I got tickets to go to a game, if it's in Boston, it's even better. And so that's a way that I feel filled up. So if you can find out by asking your clients, what hobbies do you engage in? What's your favorite sports team? What's your favorite band? What's your favorite food? Like, find out to them what matters, and then appreciate and recognize and express gratitude toward them in the language that they speak.
That's so cool. I'm seriously blown away right now. I have a whole list running of all these people that I'd love to appreciate, and there's specific things that they should be appreciated with instead of just for. So that's so exciting. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you think the world needs to know about gratitude that you shared this morning?
That's something to make me think. I mean, everyone wants it. So everyone wants to be appreciated. And even the people, there's a question about how do you deal with negative people? That was one of the questions that came through in the live Q&A today. And the interesting thing is, you've heard kill them with kindness, right? We can't change someone else who's negative, but we can begin to rewire our own minds by focusing on what's right and focusing on what's good and looking at, what do we appreciate? What is going well? We can begin to rewire our minds, and just by being intentionally kind to somebody else, by spending time with them, by focusing on being intentional with that FBI process, so they feel like you're really seeing them and you're really seeing something special and unique in them and not just a blanket statement. Like, you can begin to move in that direction, to have some compassion. I think we're in a difficult times, and a lot of people everyone you meet is dealing with something difficult. Every single person. Even last night, just getting in here, which was just a debacle, people were like, I would have never known you dealt with that last night. I'm like, well, I did, but I'm here. And so everyone's going through something. And so why not? It is so easy to do this. It is so easy to do it. We just don't take the time. So if we can just be intentional. It fills you up too. For no other reason, when you do something kind for somebody else and you recognize and appreciate somebody else, it fills you up too. So if you just want to be selfish, like just do it for that reason, but you
So
both
feel
benefit, you know? It's like if you want to feel good, there's actually one, I'll close with this. There's a guy named Martin Seligman who was at University of Pennsylvania, father of positive psychology, and he said in all their research of behavior that they've looked at, they found that doing a kindness was the single most effective way to get an increase in well-being. That was the most reliable way, measurable way, direct causal effect on well-being is to do an act of kindness for somebody else. And they study like every behavior you could think of.
That's crazy. That's
So,
crazy.
yeah.
But easy, right? Easy.
Yeah.
So be a bucket filler, not a dipper. Make sure that you're kind and be intentional with your gratitude.
Yeah.
Right? What a great way to end our Facebook Live. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you.